Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me. We're just a few minutes away from making a start. I'm just going to give everyone as much of a chance of signing into the webinar as possible. So we're going to wait a minute or two. In the meantime, can I just check, please, that everyone can hear me okay? In the questions box, if somebody could quickly just write a quick yes or a no in terms of whether you can hear me, that would be really helpful. Okay, great. Thank you. Perfect. I'm just going to mute the microphone just for maybe 1 more minute, give more people a chance to sign in, and then we'll be back with you very shortly. Thank you for joining us so far. Okay, everybody, thank you for joining me. My name is Liam Kilby. I'm one of the MBA Recruitment and Admissions Managers here at Oxford Saïd. And for the next 45 minutes to an hour, I'm going to be talking through our program here at Oxford, a little bit about the application requirements, a little bit about the process. There's some information on scholarships, there's some information on the colleges. So hopefully we're going to cover everything that you would like to hear about. I do welcome questions at any time. So if there's anything that you would like to ask, please don't wait until the end. We will have some time for Q&A, but also if your question is relevant to the slide that we're on, I'll try and answer it there in a timely manner. Can I just double check, please, that everyone can still hear me okay? Hopefully the volume is okay for everybody. Again, for those people that helped me out earlier, if you're in the questions box, could you just type a very quick yes if you can hear me? That would be really helpful just to see how many people. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody. So I think we're good to go. So as I mentioned, the next hour or so will be around about the full-time MBA. We will take some questions about the 1+1. If you're interested in that, we can talk about that too. There aren't that many specific slides designed to talk about the 1+1, but it certainly does come into the conversation in a natural way. So if you have any interest or concerns or questions about the 1+1, please do reach out for those too. I think where I'd like to start is just Oxford as the place. If you've been to Oxford before, if you have Google imaged Oxford, this is the picture that you might expect to see. This is much more of the city centre, the traditional university building, those campuses that you can get involved with here in the MBA that give you access to that Oxford experience. We are a business school that is embedded in a wider university. And what that means is that you'll have your MBA cohort in the business school with you, but you'll also have the wider student population that are here at Oxford studying at a range of different degrees in terms of undergrad through to PhD and a whole range of subjects. So you will have this second network almost that allows you to build relationships and contacts and friendships outside of your business school MBA cohort. Talking about the business school itself, this is the business school. This is just the other side of town from the picture that I've just shown you. And by the other side, I mean it's about a 10-minute walk. Oxford's a relatively small place. For those that have been here, you'll know what I mean. This is located directly next to the train station, so good access into London, for example, if you wanted to go and meet with some potential employers or some institutions that you might want to work for, but still within certainly a walking distance of where you'll be living, whether that be in the college or somewhere that you rent privately. And we'll talk more about those options a little bit later on in the presentation. But this slide is designed to give you a little bit of a view of the difference in architecture, in outlook, of the more modern, forward-thinking business school, as you would expect from an MBA, with that tradition and history of the wider Oxford buildings. So this is where you'll be for most of your working day. We, and by we I mean the university, we have departments and we have colleges, and the department of the university is the campus, is the building that runs the program. So we are the department that runs the business-related degrees, including the MBA, obviously, here in Oxford. Your college is where you'll go home after your 9 to 5 working day, and you'll eat, you'll sleep, you'll socialize, or maybe join a sports team or a club. And that is in a different part of the city, in a different kind of residential campus. And again, we'll talk more about colleges as we go through the presentation. So within this building, all of your lessons will be here. Your lecture theatres are all inside. You can see just above that reception level, there are a few desks in the window. That's the library. That's on 2 floors. There are some dining areas. There's some breakout areas. There's some individual study areas. There's some nice parks at the back. So it really is kind of everything you would need for your formal MBA learning here in this building, and everything else that you would need for the other side of your life in Oxford will be found in the college network. As we move on, we'll go into that in much more detail. But the question that I think the recruitment team and I get asked more than anything else probably is, what is the difference between a 1-year and a 2-year MBA? Why would I consider a 1-year MBA? And it's a very valid question. Depending on what your career prospects look like, what you're looking to do, what your hopes and your aspirations are, we will have a very honest conversation with you around whether or not a 1-year program is right for you, is enough time, for example. So some of these things are obvious. You have lower opportunity costs, you have less time away from your career, you can kind of reinsert yourself back into your career that much sooner. That comes with lower tuition and living expenses and a shorter payback period. Now, again, a 1-year program probably isn't right for everybody. If you're somebody who's looking to make a relatively drastic change in your career, and you're looking to maybe change your geographic location, change your sector or industry that you work in, and change your job role or your job function, then it might be worth considering whether a 1-year program is correct, because we'll certainly be considering that from our side too. When we look at your application, we'll be looking for a level of understanding from you that you have researched what this path looks like and what obstacles might there be in the way, and how can a 1-year program help you overcome those obstacles? Is it enough? And so what we look at when we review your application is your experience so far in the workplace, what we can help you achieve in a 1-year MBA, and whether those two things add up to what your stated career goals are on your application. So it's useful for you to go through that thought process yourself and understand whether or not a 1-year program is right for you. It is a very intense year. You will find yourselves working sometimes quite long hours. Other times, maybe you're able to insert yourself into that college system and join a sports team, for example, much more easily than other people at other times of the year. It is intense, but people do thrive on that intensity. We're not going to be locking you in the business school for 12 hours a day and throwing lectures at you. Essentially, it's a 4-day working week with lectures in the morning and the afternoon, at least in the first semester. And we'll talk about the program in more detail a little bit later. But there certainly is time, if you speak to alumni, to do 2 things well outside of your MBA work and all of the associated workload with the class. And one of those could be that sports team that I mentioned, or another club or society that you want to get involved with. One of those things could be going down to London for the weekend to watch a show. Whatever it is that you're looking to do, you will have time to do it, obviously with the caveat that your focus is on the MBA and how that will keep you busy for that 12 months. So just a quick word on the curriculum. As mentioned, 12 months, and it's 1 week short of an entire 12 months. And in that 12 months, you will cover all of these things. And this next slide will probably explain it in a bit more detail. So everything that we have in this slide that's in red is a core module. And those are the things that you would expect an MBA to include with regards to the fundamentals of business and becoming excellent at that basis of business. There are things in there that you would expect to see: some finance, some marketing, some accounting, leadership fundamentals, those kind of areas. Everybody does all of those things in red. And this is where I mentioned in that first semester, from September through to December, you will have Monday to Thursday, 2 lectures a day, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. And then you are essentially free with your evenings if you want to. There are things that you can get involved with. So along the bottom of the screen, you'll see things like the finance lab or the impact lab. Those things generally run in the first semester and will take place maybe in one of the evenings throughout the week for the 8 weeks of the semester. So there are things that you can do in the evenings if you want to that aren't a mandatory part of the MBA, but certainly could help you specialize or help you network or gain some skills in an area that you're looking to get into or further yourself into post-graduation. You'll notice here that there's an integrative module in every semester, 1 for each semester, and this is the way that we use the MBA to address the potential social responsibility of future global leaders. If you think about what Oxford might be known for, it is this focus on social impact, the social responsibility. And that doesn't mean that you have to want to be an entrepreneur and start your own company, working in developing nations, and changing local communities for positive ways. It just means that you understand that there is an intersection between traditional business and social responsibility that we explore here at Oxford. So it might be that as a future leader, you could be working for a multinational organization, then you have to make a decision. And that decision traditionally might be, do I increase profits? Do I make shareholders happy? Or do I make a different decision that makes my workforce happy or impact my community in a positive way? And we strongly believe that those two questions do not have to be mutually exclusive. You can do both things at the same time. And that's the kind of the lens we look through when we teach you what is a traditional business MBA. And those integrative modules are a way, or one of our ways, of doing that. So entrepreneurship allows you to gather those entrepreneurship skills that can go into an established company and disrupt from within. Global Rules of the Game is talking about effective business around the world and how that is different in different regions. And then responsible business kind of is what you would expect it to be. And it goes back to what I was just talking about does this decision have to be just for profit or just for social impact, or can it be both at the same time? And that's really where we probably see one of our strengths lie at Oxford, is that I think maybe, at least within the European landscape, we have, I think, more of a focus on social responsibility than maybe some of the other schools you might be thinking of. And globally, maybe on a par with Stanford or with the Yale School of Management, that kind of level of social interactions and social responsibility. You can see here quite visually that actually Trinity, the third term, looks a little empty compared to the first. And all that is that the electives kind of kick in. You do take 5 electives in Trinity, and it's just that we haven't listed an example list of 5. That is still quite a full semester. Don't think that Michaelmas, that first term, is very heavy and then Trinity is very empty. That's not how it's balanced. It's just that you have a choice of 40 different electives. You pick 2 in Hillary and 5 in Trinity. And without wanting to list them all on this slide, we had to find a way to represent that choice without having a list of all 40 by name. You'll notice in the summer you have an option. You can do extra electives and stay in school if you want to. You can do an internship, or you can think about maybe doing something that we call a consulting project, which is generally a chance for you to leave the school and go into a global posting somewhere as a team of students and work as a group of consultants to an established business. It could be a startup, it might be a charity, it might be a multinational, and you act as the consultants to that client. They might be looking to streamline a process or increase an efficiency, but you act as consultants. You're not working for a consultancy firm, you are the consultant to that client, if that makes sense. And you'll normally find the average split with those options in the summer is relatively even. Most people looking to go back to their own company or back to the same company would look to maybe get some more theoretical learning in school. Those people looking to maybe get traction into a new career direction, who obviously would use the internship for that, or people looking to become a consultant or at least gain the skill set of a consultant might think about the consulting project. And so there's lots of different choice there for that final 6 to 8 weeks of the year, July and August. Just one more thing on this slide before I move on. The talent development program along the bottom is designed to supplement your knowledge of business, the curriculum, the formal content of the MBA, with a series of support workshops and sessions and a program in itself to grow your softer skill set. So it might be that you want to work on public speaking, or it might be that you want to work on negotiation skills or managing difficult conversations within a team, consultative sales, those kind of things where you think, I know how business works, but I need the practical skill set to be able to put that into place too. That talent development program will address that specifically. And that's something that you can, dip your toe in and out of as much as you want to over the course of the year. You might think that in the first semester, the workshops that are available cover a skill that you already have, in which case you would probably not get involved in talent development for that semester. But it might be in Hillary or in Trinity that they're starting to address things that you would like to develop into. And that's where you would probably sign up for those workshops and get involved more. So that is a program that you can take from as much as you would like or as little as you would like, depending on your individual circumstance, but it's there and it's run by the careers team, and it's designed to get you ready for when you graduate. You have that knowledge of the MBA, but you also have the skill set to be able to put it into place in the practical world outside of a business school bubble, which I think all business schools to some extent are. So just moving on to an overview of the class. This is the class that have just graduated in the last week. We had 314 people. It's very international, as you would probably expect from most European schools. I don't think that we're certainly streets ahead of our competitors there when it comes to those kind of things. What I would say about diversity is that unlike some other schools, and I'm going to name a few that I have a lot of respect for. London Business School is an incredible institution. INSEAD is an incredible institution. They are very well known for one particular sector. So London Business School is very strong in finance. INSEAD is very strong in consulting. We don't really have that one area that we specialize in, for want of a better word. And so I think if you are interested in those schools and you think that they can support your career in those sectors, then obviously, of course, they're definitely worth your time, worth investigating. One thing about diversity, if you'll allow me, just one moment of talking about what Oxford is good at, is that because we don't have that one thing we're very famous for, outside of maybe that socially responsible lens that we talk about, I feel as though the cohort that you'll be surrounded by here comes from a slightly wider range of experiences than maybe the cohort at London, which is leaning heavily towards finance or are already involved in finance, or the cohort at INSEAD, which is obviously leaning towards consulting or already involved in consulting. And so if you go around a table in a study group and we've given you a challenge to solve, my feeling is that the ideas, the way to approach the solutions themselves, in your cohort here, it might be a slightly richer environment in terms of people coming from different angles and different experiences. Whereas at the other schools that we've talked about, you might find that some of those ideas might be a little bit similar because that's really what they know. They know finance at London very well. They know consulting at INSEAD very well. And so diversity isn't just about, well, how many nationalities does your school have? It's also about diversity of thought. And that's, I think, a really key concept when you consider who you want to be surrounded by for your time on the MBA. We want you to be involved in as interesting and as diverse a cohort in terms of experiences as possible. And so that's one thing that we look for when it comes to applications. And we'll talk about the application requirements later. So just think about that and think about the kind of people you want to surround yourself with. I do feel as though at Oxford, and to some extent probably Cambridge, because they have a similar collegiate system than we do, it might be a slightly richer network in terms of difference of experiences and differences of opinion. The female participants for this coming class that are starting a week today has gone up in a very nice way. So our incoming class is 44% female, which we're very happy with. We're proud of the work that we've been doing over the past few years to get that growing much more close to the equitable 50-50 split that we're aiming for. hopefully we'll see some continued success there. I think as we become known for a school that has a strong female contingent, and there are some incredible women that have graduated in the last 10 days that are going on to do some amazing things all over the world. I hope that this will become a self-perpetuating success story. So 44% coming in a week. Hopefully this time next year, I'll be sitting down talking to future candidates about how it's much closer to 50. That's the aim, and we won't rest until we get there. So it's heading in the right direction for sure. Now, the next two areas haven't really changed over the past couple of years. It's consistently around about 5 years work experience. So the average age is around 28, 29. And in terms of the GMAT, it's roughly, around a 690 median average GMAT, thereabouts. Again, we'll talk about requirements a little bit later on. We have had a question come through about what is the median GRE. We don't really have a median GRE simply because the number of people that take the GRE is on the lower end of the scale. And so it's not really a huge sample size. So we tend to not talk about the median GRE, but what I can say is that if you think the GRE is something that suits your strengths more effectively than the GMAT, then the score you need to be aiming for to be competitive is a total combined score of about 321, and that breaks down into a 160 on the verbal side and a 161 on the quant side. And Mohammed, thank you for your questions coming through now. Is there a preference between GRE and GMAT? No, absolutely not. We see more people take the GMAT because I think traditionally that's what people have done, but we certainly have no preference. So please do take some time to consider which of those tests suits your strengths most effectively and will give you the biggest chance of success. We have no concerns whatsoever if you choose to take the GRE instead of the GMAT. What I would say just quickly here, that GMAT or the GRE needs to have taken within the most recent 5 years. If your GMAT was from 6 or 7 years ago, then you will need to resit that exam and get a new score that's within the last 5 years to be able to apply here at the school. Other than that, no, there were no conditions really whatsoever. Sometimes I get people asking about the assessed writing component or the integrated reasoning, and we do look at those scores, don't get me wrong, but I do think that it's that overall numerical score from the quant and verbal sections that we really do focus on. We'll talk more about the GMAT and the GRE in a bit more detail just in a few more slides' time. Had a question about some of the requirements in terms of work experience and would we even review an application with a certain score? Let me answer those questions in a few slides if you don't mind, folks. We're going to have an application requirement slide. I want to make sure that we cover that area in more detail when we get there. In the meantime, let's talk a little bit about just diversity of where people come from. You can see here just very quickly that it is very widespread. There are some areas that we would like more representation from, Latin America and Middle East being two of those. We don't really have quotas that we have to hit. These numbers happen to fall quite naturally in these places most years. The dean is very insistent that we look to have at least 10% of the class from Africa. So that is the only really area that we have an eye on the numbers as they come throughout the entire year. He believes that that continent is going to be huge and is in lots of ways already huge in the future of business. And so he wants us to make sure that we are a place that the strongest African candidates can come and consider themselves to be surrounded by people that are viewing their continent and business with their continent in a very constructive way. Other than that, there are no quotas really for any other parts of the world. We certainly don't get to 28% in North America by stage 3 and then think, well, we can't admit any more North Americans because we have too many. That really is, there's no such thing. We'll offer you a place if we believe that you're strong enough to be here, regardless of anything about your background, whether it be work experience in terms of where have you worked, whether it be region that you're from, whether it be your age. We have some guidelines in terms of what we look for, but essentially, if you're strong enough to come to the school, then you'll be offered a place regardless of anything else. In terms of post-graduation, this slide just talks a little bit about the careers team. That figure on the left-hand side obviously is the number of, well, the percentage, excuse me, of graduates that have found a job within 3 months of graduation. The most recent employment report is available. It's on our website. Please have a read of that if you haven't already. you'll notice that the 92% of people have a job within 3 months. And you can see here in the middle of this slide, geographically, where is that? It is all over the world, but there is a clear leader there that almost half of the class choose to stay, in the UK, in London maybe, or in Western Europe post MBA. So if you're thinking that an Oxford MBA or a wider European MBA is maybe the first step on the way to a relatively permanent transition into Europe, then that is a path that is well trodden, that a lot of people in the class do. So regardless of where they come from, and the previous slide showed you that that was global in terms of nature of where people are coming from, half of the class are choosing to stay within Europe after they graduate. You can see there that Asia is second in 19%, and then North America is third with 14%. The message that I want to get across here just about this slide, and we'll talk more about careers on the following slide, is that the careers team have very strong networks in a very global space. So don't think that we can only get you jobs in London because we're based in the UK. That is not the case. Both the internships and the consulting project in the summer option, and also long careers after you've graduated, we do have a very global mindset in terms of getting you those opportunities. It might be that the London office are the ones that come and see us here on campus and do the recruitment, but it is with a mind of a global view of opportunities that are available and vacancies to fill around the world. Just on the right-hand side, you can see the sectors, and this is what I was talking about before. We don't have a majority that really goes into one area over the other. You'll still see consulting and finance as the two that are the biggest, but between them, it's around half of the class. The rest is split quite widely over a number of different sectors, and that's talking about that diversity of thought that I'm going back to from a few slides ago. This is just a little bit of a breakdown of how the careers team is formed. We have 4 pockets of excellence within the careers team, one for each of those industries you can see on the screen. We have specialist career programs for each one of those pockets, and then that third row, the support common to all areas, are things that the careers team will help you with in generic ways, regardless of what industry you're looking to get into. My biggest piece of advice when it comes to the careers piece here at Oxford is engage with your careers team as early as you can, simply because it is a 1-year program. If you're looking to get into consulting, for example, the McKinseys, the BCGs of this world will come onto campus in October, and you'll have been here for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And if you're looking to be recruited by them, you'll be having their case study-like interviews here on campus very early on in your year. So speak to the careers team as early as you can. Have a very strong plan on your application so that we can see you've thought about what that process looks like. During the launch period, the first 2 weeks of term, the second week of that is dedicated to careers, and that is your chance to speak to the careers team about your path through the MBA. They can give you some advice on electives to take. They can start working on your internship opportunity if you identify that that's what you want to do. They can do all those things and hit the ground running. Some people come with an idea of what they'd like to do and maybe use the first semester to really solidify that idea, and then go to the careers team in February or March and say, here's my plan. And it just adds a bit of pressure on everybody involved, the careers team, the candidate themselves, to then use essentially the next 6 months to get that into place. And so speak to your careers team, share your ideas with them, engage with them as early as you can, and you'll then have a much more productive and effective relationship with them as you move throughout the year. Colleges, we've talked a little bit about this. This picture is obviously an aerial view of part of Oxford. Each one of the quads that you can see in this picture essentially is a college. Within those 4 walls, you'll have a dining hall, you'll have some accommodation if you choose to accept it. You'll have maybe a church, you can see in the photo there, you'll have a library, you'll have some sporting facilities. And so this really is your home away from home. When you're not in the MBA, in the business school, you'll be socializing and networking within your college. Now, essentially, there are about 40 different colleges. 30 of those take graduate students, the other 10 are undergraduate only. So as an MBA, you have a choice of which college out of those 30 you would like to be a member of, and you tell us which one you would like. And that comes much later on in the process, after you've been interviewed, after we've offered you a place in the course. So it doesn't form part of your application, but it's never too early to start thinking about which one you would like. And so you might think about the college that you're looking for. And one of the things that I know people do use to filter which ones they would like is how many MBA students might be in the college with me. The class, as you know, is about 320 people, thereabouts. And they are spread over all of those 30 colleges. And one college might take 70 MBAs, and one college might take 3. And so part of your decision-making process is how many of my MBA students do I want in my college? Do I want to have a bit of a safety net where I know 70 people? And so when I socialize outside of my course, there are lots of familiar faces. Other people might think, actually, being in a college with 300 or 400 other wider university students is part of the attraction, and not having 70 gives me more chance to have 100 other wider university students. And so I don't mind if there's only 3 MBAs in my class, in my college, because it pushes me out of my comfort zone and into talking to those other strangers effectively, and building those second networks. And so it's a very personal decision based on your own thoughts, and there is no right or wrong decision, just what you would prefer. Other things might be, the architecture of the college. It might be that there's a sports team that you want to join, and one of those colleges has a particularly strong reputation for that sport. It might be rowing, and one college has better boathouse facilities. It might be a society that you want to join and that's headquartered in one of those colleges more than the others. It's a very open policy. The societies can be joined by anyone from any college, but it might be headquartered or it might be ran from one particular college, and that might draw you to that institution instead. And then it can be some things just, as cosmetic as how old is the college, how old are the buildings, how well manicured are those lawns, and where have the alumni gone that I've felt inspired by, that I can walk down the same corridors as they did. Your reasons are your own, and they're all completely valid. So have a little think about what it is you want from your college experience, and then start to make maybe a short list of the top 3 or 4. And then nearer the time, once you've had your interview, then we can have a conversation about how many places that college normally offers and how many have been taken already, but depending on when you are applying to the MBA. And your first pick can become quite strategic, because I can tell you, actually, it may not be best to use that one as your first pick, because they only take 6, and they've taken 5 already, and 3 people have already put their names forward for that final space. If you don't get your first pick, we'll find you a college somewhere. You're guaranteed a place in one of them, but you have no say in that second option. And so your first pick can become quite strategic. And we can help you with that much nearer the time. We've had a few questions coming in through about partners and family. Yes, people certainly do bring partners. People certainly do bring children. We've talked about the average age, 28, 29. Those life events are starting to happen by that age. There's a large proportion of the cohort that bring their partner with them. Some of the colleges are better at partner accommodation than others. Some of them do have family accommodation available. What we've found is that the people that are bringing maybe a partner and some children with them have decided to choose it upon themselves to go and maybe rent privately. You don't have to accept the accommodation that comes with the college place. You'll still be a member of the college no matter where you live. But if you want to have, a nice apartment that you rent privately, that you pay for yourself, that is definitely an option. You don't have to live inside those 4 walls. And there are pros and cons of each option. Living in the college gives you a bit more of an authentic Oxford experience, but some of those buildings have been built, in the 13th, 14th century, and they're a little bit drafty in the winter, and they get a bit cold, and they may not have the fastest Wi-Fi. You might have to share a bathroom with maybe 2 or 3 other individual rooms. You'll have your own room, but you might have to share a bathroom. Whereas the renting privately option gives you maybe a bit more privacy, a bit more of a modern lifestyle, but it does detract away a little bit from the experience of being fully immersed in that college. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It really is just down to your personal preference. But families are absolutely welcome. Just quickly, skipped over that too quickly. The college gives you access to the wider university network. So we're not a standalone business school. You'll be embedded in that wider university, as we've mentioned. That comes with a whole range of events. You'll have the Oxford Union, which you can see on the picture in front of you, and this is where we have a lot of distinguished speakers come and talk. We have a really wide mix of people that come in. So it could be somebody like Hillary Clinton, who came in the last year or so. It could be somebody like Jon Stewart from The Daily Show over in North America. It could be Jude Law, the actor. It could be a UK musician. It could be a politician. It could be an actor or an actress. It could be a business person. It really is a very wide range, but you'll be accessing all of those opportunities yourself because you are a University of Oxford student first and a Saïd Business School student second. So all of those facilities, all those clubs and sports teams are open to you because you are a member of that network. You just happen to be studying in the Department of Business, which is going back to what I said before. So we're going to spend a little bit of time, maybe the next 10 minutes or so, on application requirements and a little bit about scholarships. So first of all, let me just say anything on this screen is relatively mandatory. You need to have an undergraduate degree, you need to have a GMAT or a GRE score, but the expectations in terms of the level of those things can be flexible. And let me explain what I mean here. So if you look on our website, you'll see that the undergraduate degree needs to roughly be equivalent to a US style 3.5 GPA or a UK style 2.1, which is an upper class second degree. And don't worry, if you don't know what your degree relates to, we'll do that conversion work for you. Your GMAT score will say competitively look for a 650. As you know, the median is around 690. GRE, it's at 321 composite score, 160 verbal, 161 quant. What I want to stress here is that if you're sat there thinking, we had a question earlier, is would we even look at an application if it only has a 630 score? And the GMAT, yes, absolutely, because there are probably other strengths in your application that prove that you can do the MBA or that you're a good fit for the program outside of what that particular standardized test tells us about you. So please don't think if you fall below that GPA requirement or the GMAT requirement that you cannot apply. You absolutely can. You absolutely are welcome to. We have a really wide range of GMAT scores. I'm perfectly comfortable to talk to you about the people that have had maybe a 750 or higher that didn't get in, and the people that had a 550 and did get in, because we just saw strengths in other places. So please don't think that even though you must have a score, it doesn't have to necessarily be that advertised minimum for any of these things. We look at your application in a very holistic way, much more a sum of its parts rather than focusing on one individual aspect that might be a little bit below what we look for in terms of our recommended level. So please don't worry too much if you feel as though you fall a bit short in terms of some of these requirements. Professional work experience, we're looking for at least 2 years. That is simply because we want people to be able to bring some experiences with them to share in class and to relate their learning to. References, we look for 2 references. It can be 1 academic, 1 professional. It can be 2 of the same kind if you want to. Just a quick piece of advice here is that you should choose the people that know you well. Don't fall into the trap that some people do and think, I'll ask the CEO of my company because he or she has a position that carries more weight. And that's not really how it works here at Oxford. We want people that can go into detail about working with you and highlight your strengths and also where you want to develop. And if your relationship with the CEO is relatively distant in terms of reporting lines, then his or her weight that comes with that position will not do you really any favors at all. So pick the 2 people that work with you closely. It can be a colleague. It doesn't have to be a current supervisor. I know that I've met people over the past few months that are looking to maybe keep their application to themselves, at least to begin with, and so have asked, can I not use my current supervisor? Yes, not a problem at all. We don't expect, there's no mandatory thing that says you must use a supervisor for one of your referees. It can be an external client, it can be a personal mentor that you have. Honestly, anyone at all. We have some questions about, a family business. Can I use my CEO as my immediate boss, but it's also my father or my mother? Can I use those as a referee? And yes, you can. I would say if one of them is going to be a member of your family, try and use somebody, maybe an external client or somebody who is a bit more distant to maybe give more of a balanced view, and I'm sure your relatives will give a very fair appraisal of your suitability for the MBA, but it is good to balance out that family connection with somebody who's not connected with you at all. But there's nothing stopping you from using family, whatever you want to do. What I would say with some questions that are coming through, and these are really good questions, so thank you. First of all, does it hurt your chances of admission if your degree was not in a quant or business related field? No, not at all. We will look at your degree and we'll look at what you've done with your work experience so far, and we'll look at what you want to do post MBA. And as long as there's a tangible link between all of those things, then that will be in some ways much more compelling than somebody who's done a general business undergraduate and wants to then become an investment banker. As an example, we had a lady, in fact, she's coming in next week. She is a documentary filmmaker, and she studied journalism for her undergraduate degree, and then went to a School of Foreign Service for a master's degree, and is now working in the documentary filmmaking space, filming documentaries around refugee camps all over the world and the impact on mental health of the children in war-torn families. None of her background is traditional business related, but in terms of what she's looking to do with an MBA, which is launch her own film production company and run that as a business, what she wants to do, what she's done so far, what she's looking to use the MBA for, it all makes perfect sense. So you would look at her and think, you have no background in business whatsoever, but actually she's a very compelling candidate because of her own personal circumstances. So think about that. Think about writing your story in your application that fits with what you've done so far and what you're looking to do. Is having just the 2 years of experience a drawback? No. What I would say is a word of warning: if you're looking to make a very drastic change, maybe your 2 years has been working in product management in a tech company, for example, and you want to get into investment banking or private equity, that's quite a jump. And so sometimes you might think, come back in a year or two once you've had a bit more experience and a few more of those transferable skills. So what I would say, if you're on that threshold of 2 years of experience, is be a bit more realistic in your stated career goals on your application, because that's what we use to gauge whether a 1 year program is enough. 2 years of experience in one field and a desire to switch completely to another field could necessitate a 2 year MBA, and that might get in the way of your application. So just be aware of what you're trying to do with your 2 years of experience and get the balance right between your level of ambition, which you definitely should have, but also a level of realism that it's within reach for when you graduate a year from now. Is having a master's degree a plus? I mean, yeah, it's nice to have. It's not something that will get you an interview over someone else who doesn't have a master's degree. So don't feel as though, again, if you don't have one, then you can't apply, or if you do have one, then you've got more chance. That isn't always the case. Sure, it's a nice thing to have, especially if it's in a related field, definitely. But don't feel too bad if you haven't got one. Just quickly, I want to talk about the video assessment. We do have some more questions coming through, and I will get to them as much as I can. The video assessment is relatively new this year, and the idea behind this is to give you a chance to answer some questions on video using your webcam that come through to us as part of your application. Because what we look for in applicants is, as well as a strong academic background, is much more about their personality, their emotional intelligence, their self-awareness. We want people that are going to fit into that cohort that we're trying to build. And so going back to those 750 GMAT candidates that we've actually turned down, sometimes that has been because they're very intellectually strong, they're very clever people, but when it comes to sharing their experiences, working as part of a group, maybe the social skills, the self-awareness to do that, we felt that there might not be there in terms of where we want them to be on that side of things as well. So the video assessment allows us to have a bit of an insight into your personality before we get to the interview stage. They're not designed to replace the interview, at least not at the moment. Maybe in the future, one day, certainly possible, but this is the first year that we've done it. And so for now, it's just another aspect of your application. What I would say is that you don't get to the video assessment until you've actually submitted that first raft of materials. So you'll put in your career goals, You'll write your supporting statement. You'll tell us what your GMAT score was. You'll tell us what your GPA or your undergraduate degree result was. You'll submit those things. You'll give us the names of your referees. And then on the next page, you'll get a link to the video assessment. Now, it's not a big piece of work. There are 5 questions in total, 4 of which are video. 1 is just a written response question. You can do it probably easily in an afternoon. Just be aware that if you're thinking of applying and you're going to use up until the deadline, just give yourself enough time to be able to get through that first section into the video assessment. So when you first log into your application, you might think, well, I can't see the link to the video questions. That's because it comes on that second page of requirements. You'll have some time to prepare. You'll have some practice questions where you're not being recorded. We'll never see what you say on those practice questions. They don't come through to us at all. It's only when you're ready and you click through to those questions that you're then given the formal question. And it could be me or one of my colleagues that you'll see on screen reading the question out to you. You'll then have maybe 90 seconds to think about your answer with a timer counting down on the screen. Then it gets to 3, 2, 1, and then it starts recording automatically. So be prepared. You then have maybe a minute and a half, another 90 seconds to answer your question. You can't do it over, you can't take it again, you get one take. And please don't worry, this is part of your application, but on its own isn't going to make or break your application in any way at all. If you're a strong candidate and you just happen to have a bad day when you do the video questions and you think, oh, I could have done much better than that, it's not going to get in the way. It really is just designed to see, how can you think on your feet? How can you present yourself? How do you speak? How do you communicate? Those kind of things. So there really isn't any weighting on this that is extra compared to the other things that we already look for in your application. We've had a question just come through quickly around the video questions. And it's around, well, how long is the prep time? So we've talked a little bit about that. It's about 90 seconds per question for those 4 questions. For the written response, you get about 5 minutes to answer the written response, and that question could be anything in terms of what do you think is integral to the future of business, quite macro, or it could be something completely not linked to business at all. One of the candidates that we've had this year that's applied in stage 1 had a question that said, please describe the color yellow as their written response. And so it can be one of, I think, about 100 bank of questions that we have in there. And you probably won't get much prep time for that because the 5 minutes starts ticking down straight away. But you also don't have to meet a minimum word count. You can write as much or as little as you want to with regards to that. Just moving on to the stages, we've just had one that's closed down. So stage 1 is gone, 6th of September. We have 3 more to go for this year. So if you're considering joining the school in September 2020, this is your timetable. This is what you're working towards. A question's just come through, and we get this question a lot. Is there any difference between the rounds? I would say in terms of admission to the program, there is very little difference in stages 1, 2, and 3. We might see a difference at our end in terms of the number of people that apply, but we generally interview the same percentage of applicants in those first 3 stages. So in stage 3, in January, we know to expect quite a spike in applications, but we'll make contingencies that allow us to hold more interviews. So we get more applications, we'll just do more interviews. So the same percentage of people are interviewed. The only difference there is stage 4, and then it can get a little bit more competitive because the class is beginning to get a little bit full. So if you're thinking of applying this year, I would say stages 1, 2, and 3, very similar. Stage 4 is going to be a bit harder to get interviewed and a bit harder to get in. And so you have to really highlight your strengths well in stage 4 if that's a timeline that works for you. Now, this is a very important thing to say, is that don't feel as though you must rush to meet one of these stages because you've been told it's better to do that or it's better to apply early. My overarching piece of advice here is apply whenever you can put your best, most competitive application in. If that's stage 4, then that's stage 4, because if you apply early and think to yourself, if I just give myself another 6 weeks or a couple of months to maybe resit that GMAT or tweak my essays, I would have been much happier with my submission. That level of regret that you might feel, honestly, isn't worth rushing to get into January versus April. If April is going to give you the time to get across the version of yourself that you want us to see, then April is the one to go for, and there should be no question about that. With regards to scholarships, thank you for your question. That's my next slide. There are two types of scholarships. One that we manage ourselves here at the business school, and anything with a Saïd Foundation on there is one that we manage ourselves. There is also another pot of money that is managed in partnership with other organizations. So, for example, the SCOL scholarship, both us and the SCOL Center for Social Entrepreneurship will have an equal kind of hand in who gets that money. SCOL ultimately have the final say, but you have to be admitted onto the program to be even eligible for that scholarship. And so we'll pass SCOL a list of everyone that's been admitted by a certain point of the year, and then they will then interview themselves and shortlist themselves and pick the final recipients. So for pot one, money that we control, that money is given out at every stage, including stage 4. There is money left over in stage 4. We keep money back on purpose because we know they're going to be strong candidates at every window. Is it more likely that you'll get some in stage 1? Not necessarily. There's certainly more available to give out in stage 1 because nothing has been given out so far. But you still have to be competitive. It's not going to be more of a guarantee that you'll get money if you apply early. Interestingly, stage 4 sometimes sees some money come back because people have been waiting to hear back from other schools. We might not be their first choice, and so they wait until the very end and then decline their place at Oxford. And if they were holding a scholarship offer, that money comes back to us quite late in the game, and we can give that money out to other people that have been waiting or some stage 4 applicants. What I would say here is that no matter when you apply, you'll be considered for scholarships in your window of application, stage 1, stage 2, whatever it is that you apply in, and you'll be brought back into the conversation at every subsequent window too. So if you apply in stage 1, you'll be considered in that round. You'll also be considered against everyone that applies in stage 2 and everyone that applies in stage 3. So there's more than just your immediate window in terms of chances of getting some funding. I would recommend, if you're interested in learning more about scholarships, there is a scholarships webinar that I'm hosting actually a week on Wednesday. I believe it's the 25th of September. So if you're interested, if you register for that, we'll be going into this aspect in much more detail. For now, all I would say is when it comes to scholarships, have a look on our website. There are some scholarships that demand their own application requirements. It might be an extra essay or an interview. They'll have their own deadlines that you have to meet. So if you think you match one of the profiles that SCOL, for example, is looking for, make sure you don't miss out by ensuring that you have your essay done on time or that you're available for interview when they look to interview. So do some research into scholarships and then join me next week for the scholarship webinar. Just very quickly, some next steps. If you haven't, send us your CV. We do have some email addresses you can find out on our website, and I'll share those with you a little bit later. You can download a brochure from our website. I think if you speak to candidates that have applied recently, they'll say that the GMAT or the GRE prep is the one thing that takes the most time, the highest number of hours. So don't underestimate how long you need to be able to do that to get the score that you're looking to achieve. Come and see us here at the school if you happen to be in the UK with work or on business, or you happen to just take a trip. We're just an hour away from London on the train, so we're very easy to get to. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're adjacent to the train station, so it's really easy to find us. We have formal open days that you can find on our website. We have one coming up in October. We also have the ability just to visit campus. There's a form you can fill out online that gives us a few days notice saying that you're going to be in town on a certain day and can you come in and see us? And yes, you absolutely can. We can maybe have you observe a lecture if they're happening that day. You can maybe meet an existing student. You can have a tour of the building. We can talk in much more detail about your individual profile. There have been a few questions that have come through, and I'm sorry I can't get to them all, but it's been questions about their own individual circumstance. And that kind of campus visit or a one-to-one phone call, which is also an option, is much more ideal to have those in-depth conversations about you as an individual. Start your application. There is the ability to go back in, save your progress, come out for a few days, go back in and pick up where you left off. It doesn't have to be done in one sitting. And as I mentioned before, make sure you give yourself enough time for those video or those online assessment questions. I'm just going to leave you here with a quote or a kind of a mission statement, so to speak, from our dean, Peter. And this talks a little bit about that intersection between traditional business and society. I have some email addresses there at the bottom. If you want to get in touch with me, please do. If you want to get in touch with the team, the wider team, then please use the MBA recruitment email address. I'm just going to mute the microphone just for a moment, guys, and review the questions that have come through that I haven't been able to answer, and I'll be right back with you. If you are unable to stay with me, then thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your time, and I hope that we hear from you and speak to you soon. If you are able to stick around, I'll try and get to as many of those questions as I can in the time that we have left. But thank you so far, and I'll be back with you in just a moment or two. Hi guys, thank you very much for holding with me. I'm sorry about the delay there, just making sure that I got through all of the questions. There's just a few that have come through that are relatively common, so I want to address those first. One of them is around the ability to apply with one or two things missing from your application, maybe an English test score or a GMAT. What I would say is that I would recommend that you certainly do prepare everything to be finished on time for your submission. If there's something missing, we'll get in touch and say thank you for applying, but we're missing a GMAT score, and we often give you a bit of a grace period in terms of getting that back to us. But if you're unable to, and by grace period I mean probably nothing more than a week after the deadline has passed, we will ask you to put you back into the next following stage. You will not be considered for that stage. You'll be classed as incomplete. So it's definitely worth ensuring that you have everything ready to hit submit. And one of those things that is less in your control are the referees, because you'll put in their email addresses, they'll be emailed from the system as soon as that happens. They'll then have a deadline, and if you don't effectively manage their expectations or chase them, they could slip. So please have a conversation with your referees so that they understand the importance of getting everything in before the deadline has passed. We often do offer that grace period, but it's never guaranteed, and we reserve the right to have no grace period at all and say the deadline is the deadline, in which case you'll be pushed back to the next stage. On that note, somebody's asked about a conditional offer. Can I apply without the GMAT and then maybe be interviewed on the proviso that I get a GMAT score further down the line? That is something that we have offered before. It's on a personal case-by-case basis, and for example, there are some regions that we get candidates coming from where the GMAT test centers might be closed for a couple of months of the year, or they might be quite remote and hard to get to. And if you feel as though that is going to get in the way of your application, then get in touch. Email me, email the team, explain the situation as to why it's going to be difficult for you to get that whole application completed before the submission, but you really are interested in this particular deadline. And again, on a case-by-case basis, we can certainly look at doing that. We do have a question that's coming through relatively commonly about, is there an upper age limit for the MBA? And I would say, no, there is no upper age limit at all. We don't discriminate against how old you might be. What I would say is that the conversation might turn towards the cohort that you are looking to surround yourself with. And by that, what I mean is, if you have 10 or 15 years of work experience and the average work experience for this MBA is maybe 5, what can you learn from that cohort that you don't necessarily already know? Is it better for you to be surrounded by a cohort that is maybe at your level in terms of seniority or career progression so far? So we'll have that conversation with you, and that might include the executive MBA as an option. But if you choose that the full-time 1-year course is the one that fits your lifestyle, but also fits your career needs most effectively, then we absolutely will welcome your application. I'm very happy to share that the age range is quite wide. On the full-time MBA, it can go from 24 through to about 38, 39. And so you are very welcome to apply if you're towards the upper end of that experience scale. Just be prepared to talk about how you've thought through the other options and why this is the right choice for you. We've had a couple of questions come through just about, and these might be a little bit kind of not following a theme, guys, so bear with me to make sure that I get all of them answered. Can I submit more than 2 references? Grace, thank you for your question. Officially, no, you can't. But if you connect with an alum or you connect with a student and they want to write to us on your behalf, then informally they can email me or they can email the team and say they've met with you, they would back your application, they think you'd be a strong candidate, and we can use that as maybe an unofficial 3rd referee that can be added to your application. But the 2 formal referees, in terms of the email addresses you provide in your application, are designed to be the real ones, so to speak. Sure, connect with alumni and connect with students and have them write to us if they feel as though they want to get behind you, but it won't be an official 3rd reference. We will not accept more than 2. I think that might be all the questions in terms of the common themes, guys. I'm very sorry, folks, if I haven't been able to get to your individual question. We have run out of time and actually overran a little bit. Thank you so much for staying with me. This session has been recorded, so if you've had to duck out early or you've joined late, then we'll email you a recording in the next 48 hours or so. Please revisit this and reach out with any questions. The email addresses should be on screen for you still. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Again, thank you for your attention, and hopefully we'll see some applications and some questions come through from you very soon. Please join me next week for scholarships if you're interested in that. Until then, thank you again, and all the very best, and we'll speak to you soon.